Hello, fellow YouTubers and aviation enthusiasts and artistic enthusiasts. Um, I wanted to, the objective of making this presentation is really simple. It's going to be my impression of what's going on in Russia, the Ukraine, and the possibility of nuclear weapons being used there. It shouldn't be that surprising to any of us, because when you concentrate power in the hands of one man, who's an older guy and, in my opinion, is bored, or has been bored up until now. Now his life has taken on more of an interesting twist. He's more known and recognized now throughout the world. He was known and recognized anyway because he's been Russia's tyrant and dictator for a long time now, which is why we should obviously see the preservation of our peaceful transfer of power legacy as one of our strongest aspects of our identity, is the peaceful transfer of power that we've enjoyed for over 220, 30 years, something like that. It's the keystone to us not killing ourselves off altogether. And that's the best thing that I can say about a democracy. So going back to Russia, here's a guy, elderly dude. Apparently he's been injecting his face with Botox too. If you look at him, he's all puffy and, doesn't look as old as he really is. But here's a guy that could be suffering. You don't know what's going on with this one person. That's why one person should not have the power to end life, to end human life, and destroy the human species on this planet. Hey, if we're going to do that, there should be at least a committee. Think about that, the name of that committee, what it might be. The Longevity of the Human Race Committee. The Survival of the Human Race Committee. I'm always trying to make a joke out of stuff. There's no joking about this situation, though. To me, it's clear this guy is unhinged, and he is having fun. He's having the fun of like a Charlie Manson or Jack the Ripper, but only on a much larger scale, and that's what makes him feel so good. Hey, nobody can threaten the entire planet like I can right now. All I have to do is get a few orders here and there, and the whole world blows up. And what can we do about it? Not a whole lot. I would say the test and the bald fist that Putin is showing to the rest of the world is right in the face of Joe Biden right now. And again, we have another I'm not crazy about criticizing Joe Biden. It's hard to say. It's really difficult for me to say this because I'm a Democrat. I'm a conservative Democrat, as I've said before. And I think that the Democratic Party has lurched way too far to the left and way too much towards socialism, in my opinion. And it's making the partisan divide in our country even worse. Not as bad as what the right wing has done, but if you're looking at it from the right wing, if you're a right winger pod person, Trump pod person, and you look at Joe Biden, tell you the truth, I don't understand. I just don't understand the hate that's involved. But you know what? I never do want to understand. But I do want to know. I want to be able to react to it in the correct way. The correct way meaning getting rid of the threat with the least amount of damage or collateral damage, which is the challenge of Joe Biden and the Ukraine theater right now. If I was Joe Biden after the comment about nuclear weapons from Putin, I would give the Ukrainians any kind of non-nuclear weapons that they want, as long as they cannot reach Moscow. With the understanding with the Ukrainians that they're not going to go beyond the boundary line between Ukraine and Russia. Now, some friends that I have, they make the logical argument and support the conclusion that it's not enough. Like Iraq, when the first George Bush conquered Iraq back in 1990, 1989, 1990, Desert Storm, he stopped. But, like he didn't continue to Baghdad. George Bush Sr., Desert Storm, circa 1989. We went in because he invaded Kuwait. We went in and kicked his ass, and killed a lot of the Republican Guard. Didn't take very long either. I hesitate to say that was a proud moment for me as an American, but in a way it was. I have to say, George Bush, the Bush family, I think, is my favorite Republican hierarchy. What do you call it? Family? I don't know. There's a name. Family that runs things. Is that an Oleg or no? I forget what it's called. Anyway, I like George Bush Sr. And basically, I like George W. Bush too, but he made a bad mistake in Iraq. But right after 9/11, he went out in Washington, D.C., and not many people on the left ever talk about this. He went out to Washington, D.C., personally, the president went out to the Muslim community in Washington, D.C., brought them all on national television. They were all standing around him at the White House. And he told our country to go out and engage the Muslim community, make sure they don't feel like outsiders. Make sure that they still know that they're Americans. They're required to be loyal Americans, but most of them are. Most of any group that you can find, you're going to find, goodness and things like that in them. And he told them, and here's what I really liked, is that, and this is George W. Bush, okay, right after 9/11, he tells Americans to engage with the Muslim community and make sure that the Muslim women can get out and go shopping. Get out and go shopping or live their normal life, whatever that might be. But I like the way he groups the women should get consideration and attention. But okay, so he did that. What's Joe Biden going to do now? So I want to reference a source of reference. I usually call this a bibliography. Frederick Forsyth's novel called The Devil's Alternative, published in 1979. I read it several times because I think he's just one of those lucky guys, lucky human beings that's a master of storytelling and putting it in print. He was the author of The Day of the Jackal, which came out in the 60s. Oh, God, who was that actor's name? The famous British actor. Darn it, I can't remember his name, but the guy that played the assassin, that was the Jackal in the movie. Okay, that was in the movie. And the movie is amazing. So I never read The Day of the Jackal. I read The Devil's Alternative by Frederick Forsyth. Came out in 79. Day of the Jackal came out in the 60s. And then I saw the movie, The Devil's Alternative, and it was horrible. I think Pierce Brosnan is the... I don't know. That wasn't the... no, you know what? It was never made into a movie. The Devil's Alternative, I don't think was there. No, it wasn't made into a movie. Really, fundamentally, it was about Ukrainian nationalists wanting to separate from Russia. They don't want to be a part of Russia anymore. And this goes way back. I dated a girl in the 70s that was from the Ukraine. She had a son, was divorced. Really nice person, very nice, very likable, very pretty, really pretty. She knew how to speak Ukrainian/Russian and English very well. She might be employed today in that capacity. I don't know. I lost touch with her. But when I knew her, she told me about the sentiment of Ukraine towards Russia. And they said they hate, all the Ukrainians hate Russia. They just hate them because of the legacy. Remember the cultural damage video that I did? And how cultural damage can prolong through from generation to generation. Well, the hatred of Russia from within Ukraine is handed down from generation to generation, largely because of they experienced genocide at the hands of the Russians, and that had to do with a famine or food shortage that prevailed. You think about fighting wars. Where do the soldiers get all the food? where do they get the gasoline? I mean, you know, you and I have to get up every day and think of like, you know, okay, do I have enough money to buy food and gasoline today? And oh, well, if I don't, then I have to go work, get a job, do something. These massive wars that have been fought through the 20th century, you got to remember that all those soldiers, all they're doing is killing and consuming. So who does the work of coming up with supplies and the goods that an army needs to fight a war? That's not warfare today. Today it's push-button warfare. Our drones are better than your drones. I think we do have the best drones too. The Russians have more than enough nuclear capability to wipe out most life on this planet. Here's a guy with his finger on the button. For all we know, he has dementia. We don't even know. And I think he got bored and decided, you know, hey, I'm still alive. I can do anything I want. You know, any kind of whimsical thing that I want. If I want to push the button, who's going to stop me? There's nothing in place to stop a single person from doing something like that, or from a single person fomenting an insurrection, January 6, 2020. How in the world can Donald Trump say that he had nothing to do with that? Oh, anyway, another video. All right, so back to Russia. So I think it was General Petraeus, pretty sure it was General Petraeus on CNN, said that if Putin uses tactical and nuclear weapons in Ukraine, we're going to move in there. We're going to go into Ukraine and we're going to, you know, be involved and engaged. So, you know, it's a very difficult situation. I would recommend anybody to read The Devil's Alternative by Frederick Forsyth. It talks about the Ukrainian resistance to Russian occupation and Russian dominance. The funny thing is that the Ukrainians are portrayed as being terrorists, and they do commit some terrorist acts in this story. And this is the one problem I have with Forsyth. He kind of describes the Russians as being the good guys. Hey, we just want to be Russians. We don't want our face rubbed in it. So the Ukrainians hijack a huge oil tanker. Sound familiar? Huge oil tanker. And they take over this oil tanker and they tell the rest of the world, we're going to contaminate the entire ocean in this area. We're going to blow this ship up completely and spill so much oil that you're going to be decades getting this thing fixed and turned around. We're sick of Russia. Oh, the Ukrainian, I don't give you away, I shouldn't give away the plot, but the Ukrainians commit a terrorist act against the Russians that they never experienced. The Russians don't really understand terrorism, I don't think. But the Ukrainians committed a really significant terrorist act against the heart of the Kremlin. There's an assassination, let's just put it that way, okay? And Russians would think it's impossible to do something like that in Russia. So the Ukrainians are ready to announce it to the world unless they get favorable response to their demands. I forget what the demands were. Actually, they wanted to announce it. I think their main intention was to assassinate this guy and then announce it to the world. Russia's ego can't handle that. And I guess Joe Biden has got to be keeping that in mind in whatever action he decides he's going to take if Russia uses nuclear weapons. That the Russian ego, just like the male ego is the biggest problem our planet faces, the Russian ego can't handle their noses being rubbed in the dirt. They just can't, and that's what's happening. They're losing right now. And the rest of the world knows that. And that's why Putin, instead of being a conquering tyrant, you know, it looks like he's like a cowering coward, you know, hiding somewhere in the Kremlin. So their ego, I don't know how their ego is going to be preserved through this. In the Devil's Alternative, their ego is preserved. And the way Forsyth presents it is that, you know, either the Russian ego is preserved or there's going to be a major outbreak of war in the European theater where they would invade, you know, through Poland, go into Germany and conquer Europe, conquer Western Europe. Could they do it? you know? uh, who wants to know? I don't. I don't care what they can conquer. And part of me says, give them what they want, but then the other part of me says, remember Hitler in 1938 at Munich with Chamberlain, the Prime Minister of England. Chamberlain gives him, what did he give him, Alsace-Lorraine or Austria or something like that, just to try to appease him. Appeasing a tyrant never works, never. And Churchill came along and put his fist, in Hitler's face and said, here's the kind of consolation, here's the kind of appeasement that you can expect from the English, and he balled his fist and put it right in Hitler's face. Well, what did Hitler do? He turned away from England and went and invaded Russia. So you all have your own opinions on how to deal with the situation. I think that what Joe Biden should do is make it clear to Putin what he's going to do. Make sure that he understands, and make sure that the Russian people understand too. So he somehow has got to get the message through to Russia is if you pull this stunt with tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine, you're risking far more than it seems that you understand. We will respond. Okay, anywhere in the planet, anywhere in the world where there's a nuclear weapon detonated, we have a very detailed and planned response to that. And all I can say is that the amount of carnage and this is what Biden should say, the amount of carnage could become unlimited. Now, do the Russian people want that? I can't believe they'd want that after what they suffered in World War II. They don't want that. They would like to have a normal life for a while, right? Hey, what's normal? Good question. Anyway, curious to know what you guys think. In terms of air power, I think it's irrelevant. Manned airplanes don't make that big of a difference in this day and age of warfare. It's more of a push button kind of affair, although many people can still be killed even though you're not pointing a rifle at somebody. You're pointing a whole lot of destructive power at somebody with that button that you're going to push. And there's a variety of different weaponries what is it going to be? The Allies? Russia was also our ally in World War II, although it's hard to look at Joseph Stalin and consider him to be an ally of the United States. That's kind of farcical. So Frederick Forsyth, the Devil's Alternative, Ukrainian terrorist nationalist, hijacked a huge oil freighter, and we've seen that happen. I don't know about an oil freighter, but large ships have been hijacked in the Arabian Sea, at the Horn of Somalia on Eastern African coast. That's come to an end also. I'm not sure exactly how that happened. Russians are losing in Ukraine, and consider yourself. Try to put yourself into the shoes and into the role of a Russian 21, 22-year-old guy. He's really beginning his adult life, or he's into his adult life, and what are you going to do? What's your career going to be? What's your life going to be? Which direction is your life going to go? Well, there's been a lot of them that have gone down to Ukraine and have died. For what? For some, some dictator sitting at the top of the food chain on his golden throne, telling people go out and die and conquer Ukraine for me. That's really what it is, because Ukraine is not a security threat to Russia. They're not. They never have been. They've been Russia's whipping boy, and that's why there's so much hatred and contempt in the Ukraine for the Soviet Union. So please respond. I'd appreciate it if you did, and you can tell me that I'm way off base, or you can tell me I'm right on target. I think Joe Biden's got a really tough moment, real close. And I'm just hoping that his mental faculties and that he's able to handle this in a thoughtful, thought-out way. The problem is that there may be no way out. And how do we tell our kids that we're so screwed up as we become adults that there's no other way for us to resolve our differences than eliminating all human life on the planet? Gee, sorry, you guys. I'm sorry, too. I'm sorry I'm laughing about this, but theater of the absurd was something that Shakespeare understood very well. And this is theater of the absurd and the egotistical and the psychopath and the sociopaths. It's the psychopaths and the sociopaths are the best thing for fascism, and I can sense fascism getting a stronghold in our country. The Republican candidate for governor in the state of Pennsylvania thinks that even if a 10-year-old girl is raped and she's pregnant from that rape, that she shouldn't have the right to abort the baby, to abort the pregnancy, I should say. Okay. Why does a man make that call? What, us men are more in touch with what God wants? I love that when that happens. Oh, I know what God wants, and I know what God is telling me to do, and I know God is telling you to do. Oh, George Carlin, man, step right in. Can George Carlin just come walking in here now and go off on religion? And I'm a church-going guy. I'm a Lutheran, and I don't endorse Martin Luther's attitude towards Jews, and it's terrible and misdirected and misguided. But at the same time, Lutherans celebrate the idea of Christianity, and being a Christian is hard to do. There's nothing easy. If you think being a Christian, like a real Christian, outgoing, and then a real Christian up here, man, I struggle with that. That's why I have to go to church, because I need that help. Anyway, I hope you all are having a good day, and I regret having to paint such a dour and sour picture of current events, but there's no getting around this, and it's looking like a hotbed of possible nuclear conflagration, which would be kind of depressing, don't you think? All your food's contaminated. What are you going to have to eat today? All your food is radiation contaminated. Your place is radiation contaminated. All the air you're breathing is radiation contaminated. Have a good day. That's what our politicians are telling us. Sometimes I think anarchy might have been a better choice, but not really. Then it'd just be killing everybody else, and it's like the Wild West all over again. Peace be with you, and hopefully we can have our prayers answered.